people not only have to be re-educated to the importance of supporting black business, but the black man himself has to be made aware of the importance of going into business. And once you and I go into business, we own and operate at least the businesses in our community. What we will be doing is developing a situation wherein we will actually be able to create employment for the people in the community. And once you can create some employment in the community where you live, it will eliminate the necessity of you and me having to act ignorantly and disgracefully, boycotting and picketing someplace else, trying to beg him for a job.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Federation of African Canadian Economics. FACE is an historical movement co-founded by Black Canadian visionaries empowering generational wealth creation while fostering Black change makers. If you are a Black entrepreneur or know one that could use an affordable loan of up to $250,000, this is the movement for you. I would like to welcome all our listeners to TOC Podcast. TOC stands for the Other Canada Podcast, the show that is anchored in the undeniable fact that Canada's historical and current lens is homogenous at best and filled with gaps that we aim to bridge. The space where we courageously explore BIPOC voices like you've never heard them before. At TOC Podcast, we pride ourselves in presenting to you Black, Brown, Indigenous, and non-BIPOC individuals that have decided to move from allies to accomplices. Yes, white allies exist and accomplices as well. Today's episode is about Black families, Black relationships, and the realities of coming to a continent that does not look, feel, smell, or experiences the same way as the one you're born in. We have Dr. Phil Okeke. She is a teacher at the University of Alberta, a full teacher, might I add. And we have my lovely co-host of Season 2, Tiffany Challenger. I am your host, Thierry Lindor. Some of you know me as an entrepreneur and an active citizen, but this pales in comparison to our superstar queens that are with us today. All right? So if you're driving your car, you want to pull on the side of the curb and stop driving. If you're at the supermarket, you know what? Keep shopping. Pump up the volume in your earphones. If you're at work, fake working, but pump up the volume and listen to this. Beautiful people, we are about to bring some gems into your life. Turn up the volume. We're disrupting the status quo in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey-oh!
Africa wasn't afforded some of the same services.
Rosie, a Sir George graduate on a master's in McGill, helps organize a computer-centered city.
That's why the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund launches today. This $291 million fund will allow Black entrepreneurs and business owners to access loans from $25,000 to $250,000.
Queens, how are we doing today?
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
Dr. Phil, today, for the sake of the conversation, we will call you...
The real Dr. Phil.
The real Dr.
You are
Phil.
now the real Dr. Phil.
Officially, we're so blessed to have you today. Like every guest in Season 1 and Season 2, actually, this is part of Season 2. We're excited to have you. You are our first scholar to be on the podcast. We're proud that you are, as a Black woman, you are with us, going to be able to share your knowledge, your experience. But more importantly, we have to put you through our 6 questions in 60 seconds. Are you ready?
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. So me and Tiffany are going to alternate with questions that you could answer in 1 or 2 words maximum. All right? If we ask you to expand, feel free to expand. Okay? First question, what has the pandemic taught you?
I would say keep going.
Second question, number 2. Thomas Sankara or Martin Luther King?
Martin Luther King.
Third question, Maya Angelou or Angela Davis?
Maya Angelou, of course.
She said that.
Of course. Would you choose Afrobeats or R&B?
Afrobeats. I'm upbeat.
Okay, you're upbeat, right. Okay, perfect. Can you tell me the advantages of being a Black woman in 2021? Or an advantage of being a Black woman in 2021?
What are the challenges of being a Black woman?
I want to hear the advantage first.
The advantage first? Okay.
Maybe I put the advantages in one. phrase, which I borrowed, I think, from Oprah Winfrey. Black don't crack.
Okay, that's mic drop. But to go to my next question, which is, can you tell me then what is the challenge of being a black woman in 2021?
It's challenging because we are not heard. Often we are not seen. We're visible. We don't have agency. It is very challenging to find that many of us do a lot of the work of family, a lot of the work of society. It may have been hidden in the past, but COVID-19 showed us that we are among the majority of frontline workers in the hospitals, in the family, across the communities. For all that we are doing, I just hope that our world will not forget all that we've done, because black women have always been doing this.
Yeah.
That's right.
It wasn't discovered, it was there. So I'm hoping that we'll keep this in mind because we need to be heard.
Amazing. I'm hearing a beautiful accent. I would have to ask, our audience is going to wonder, which part of the world were you blessed to be from?
When people ask me this question, especially when they ask me about my name, it's too long and everything, I kind of say, well, have you considered me being a black Ukrainian? They have long names too. And you're okay with their names. I am from Nigeria.
That's it.
And I'm of the Igbo ethnic group.
Yes. Beautiful Nigeria. We have to go.
That's
our first destination.
The objective is to get over to the continent as soon as possible. And I think that meeting you definitely is encouraging to go over and try to find my way there. The real Dr. Phil, that's your new name.
Yep, period.
For sure. Full professor at the University of Alberta, but also, in my opinion, a woman who's taken a lot of stock of what it is to be someone to come here, be professionally successful,
Yep.
but also understand that you're evolving in an environment that is completely foreign to you.
Yeah.
Okay. My first question to you would be, how did you take stock of managing this place? And how did it affect you when you were trying to build to be this woman that I have the privilege of sitting with and having these wonderful conversations? What did you realize was so different here than where you were from home? And also, which one do you think, in your opinion, makes you feel most comfortable with everything that you bring to the table?
I would say that perhaps one of the ways that what grounded me was the culture I grew up in. Coming to Canada, I knew it was radically different. I think one of the things that really hit me was the level of individualization. People are so individualistic. It's me, 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 me. And I grew up in a culture that was very communal. It is we, and we work together. But I also began to realize something wonderful about being in a different culture, because migrating to a new homeland is a violent decision. You uproot everything that you know and come to a brand new place and start all over. And I told myself that I will mine every advantage that this brings. And that came to what I called restructuring your cultural basket.
Rewind. No, pull up.
What are you called?
What is that?
Imagine restructuring your cultural basket.
Okay, and what is
expand
that?
on
Yes,
Imagine
please.
yourself as a new person in Canada, working in Canada. Imagine Canada as a cultural supermarket. You don't buy anything with money, but you can take things from the shelf and replace things in your basket. So Canada and its cultures, and thank God it's multicultural, opened my eyes as a mirror to my own culture. It showed me the good, the bad, and the ugly in my culture. I've done away with the good, with the bad and the ugly. But it showed me how things I took for granted, I should hold on to my heart. Respect for elders, care of elders, not as a responsibility, but as a blessing.
Correct.
The value of children, the next generation. I began to see that these things I took for granted.
Yeah.
I really need to hold on to community. You are nothing until your community says you're somebody.
Hey.
We don't care how many houses you have. If you don't give to community, if you don't thrive in your community, you are nobody to us. And that is what I held on to, who I am. But then I began to see also that I need to take the good in Canada.
Yeah.
Things
From that
like
supermarket basket.
from that supermarket, we do a lot of giving as community, but we tend to limit it to our community. I kept that, but I also took from the shelf volunteering, going to places where they are complete strangers.
Yeah.
And I noticed something. A lot of volunteers are elite people. That's
course.
actually where you expand your networking.
Very true.
Right.
I began to look at, yes, we are community, but there has to be a balance between community and individuality. You need to set your boundaries.
Yeah.
Your whole extended family will kill you if you carry them on your back.
Yeah.
You need to help, but you need to draw a boundary.
Gotcha.
I began to restructure, to change things, and it went from my attitude to life to food. I began to realize there are vegetables in my culture that are wonderful, but instead of eating dry vegetables from Nigeria, they have wonderful bok choy here. It happens to be Chinese, but hey, who cares? This
the
is
supermarket,
multicultural,
yeah, right?
just
You take that
supermarket.
one.
Get wonderful vegetables. Don't worry where they came from, because this is a supermarket and you don't pay. So I call on other immigrants, I call on other
Creative
black
lives.
people,
Yeah.
and Canadians all over. Begin to restructure your cultural basket. Take from the shelf and drop things from the
Yes.
shelf that you don't need. Remove
Yeah.
all those venoms in your
Yeah.
culture
Yeah.
so that you become not just a Canadian, but a transformed Canadian.
Wow, love that, love that. That's a great way to look at it. I love the analogy of walking to a cultural supermarket and saying the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? In that sense, in that spirit, we had an amazing supper yesterday.
We did.
Right? And I wish it would have been podcasted.
Yes.
Where were you guys? Nick, what's going on? All right. So in that spirit, you touched on something so valuable. I myself, I've struggled to balance the attainment of certain success in a capitalistic system that we live in. Canada is a capitalistic system, and managing and trying to be a light, a beacon in my family as a father, as a husband. I'm separated now, but to what extent do you think that this cross-Atlantic travel impacts Black families when they come to Canada? And if you could you touch on how to navigate this system as Black Canadians that sometimes, most of the time actually, are either first generation or second generation, and we still haven't figured out that analogy of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and taking what's good and putting it in our cultural basket, like you said, because it's free. So could you touch on that? Like, how could Black Canadians of African descent, when they come to Canada, how could they keep their family together and navigate this capitalistic system? What advice would you have for them?
I would say that, first of all, we have to begin with what we value. What are your values?
Yeah.
Because I think many of us come here because we say in search of a better life.
Yeah.
What is that better life? Is it big houses? Cars? One of the things that intrigue me is the fact that we hear of celebrities who have millions of dollars, who have houses all over the place, and we hear that this person died. Both in our communities, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston,
Yeah.
there are lots of them also in the world beyond. We heard that they died, and we heard about the circumstances of their death.
Correct.
They had all of these things,
Right.
but they were still not happy.
Hey, facts.
We hear of, there was this woman, I can't remember her name, but there are people who have all the material things. The glitters. But they still went into drugs.
Yeah.
They went into various things. They became self-destructive.
Yeah.
And these things do not instruct us. Let us know that material things are just stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff does not inspire. Stuff is not sufficient.
Yeah.
Begin with family. Begin with community. Everything, well, your values, if they don't coincide with giving, with being part of people, with being relational.
Yeah.
Everything points to relations. That's what keeps us going.
Yeah.
Relationships are very important in our lives. We are created to be in relationship with people.
Yeah.
And we don't value these things. And we don't mean, the million people that follow you on the internet. We mean real, healthy relationships. And we don't mean too many of them. We just mean quality relationships.
Quality over quantity.
It begins with the family. How can people be leaders in society when they can't even lead their own families?
Oof, that's true.
That's a pull-up. Rewind.
You need, because family, we said that it takes a whole
Dr. Phil.
village.
You
You have to
what
repeat
you said.
exactly what you said.
And I always forget to.
Do that. How could people tell us be leaders
In society.
in society when they cannot even lead in the family?
Oof.
Why do we continue to police politicians, various leaders in their capacities, as to whether they are cheating on their spouses, whether they are staying there for their kids, whether their kids are not happy and taking drugs? For you to be a leader, you have to begin with your family.
Absolutely.
That is where you actually learn how to be a leader.
It's the micro to the macro. At Face, we started off our platform, where of course our mandate is entrepreneurship and making access to capital for Black businesses across the country. But we understood it was much more than that. Our intersectionality and more than who we are as entrepreneurs and business owners, that takes a big part and has a huge influence on the type of business owner that you are. So we asked a series of questions. And one of the questions that we asked was, do you have extended family that are invested in your life? Do you have children? How many children? And we asked these things because for me, there's a link between being a business owner, and in this case, it's a leader. When you decide to start a business, you're a leader, right?
You're community.
You're a community leader, right? And the family that you have. And I think Terry's question is very important because when you look at what it is to be a Black family, first of all, Black love is rebellious.
Correct.
Here, right? Already that's very rebellious
Well
thing.
said.
Man and woman, Black man and woman getting together, we're gonna stick it out, we're going to
It's an
create
act of resistance.
a different type of generational wealth. We're creating legacy if we are blessed with children. Then you add children in that mix, right? Now you add that interpersonal dynamics, plus you're gonna be a business owner. Put that in the pressure cooker called Canada, where there is racism and all kinds of other pressures from the outside.
Great visual.
How do you keep this micro community, this initial important leadership, the family, together so you can perform as a community leader in running a business? What's the recipe, Doc?
Face is on the right track. I would ask this business or aspiring business people, startups or wherever you are, why do you want to run a business?
Your big why.
Why? Because it really depends on why. If it's to make money, anybody who sets up a business to make money has already failed.
Correct.
Because what would you do with that money? If you're telling me that you want to do it to make a difference in the lives of people, you will still make money. But we want businessmen and women, LGBTQ, wherever you call yourself, to make a point of making a difference in the lives of people.
It's the intention.
That is the
behind.
intention
Correct.
of behind your business.
That's key, Dr.
Making
Phil.
a difference.
Because what I'm hearing from the real Dr. Phil is that if your big why into becoming a community, because let's face it, entrepreneurs are the leaders. They are the big influencers in communities. Right now, the youth is paying attention to entrepreneurs.
Correct.
All youth are looking up to be YouTubers. That's being an entrepreneur, a creative one at that, but an entrepreneur. What I'm receiving from what you're giving me, right? I have my basket. I'm taking notes. What I'm taking from you right now, in terms of very good point, is that money should be a byproduct of the impact that you bring into people's life, the positive impact. Am I receiving that correctly,
Yes.
Dr. Phil?
Exactly, just so well said. Making a difference in the lives of people is what makes your life not empty when you become that millionaire.
Purposeful.
That is where you have purpose.
Yeah.
You don't have purpose for your millions.
No.
You have purpose because the millions are a byproduct. But when people chase after the byproduct, by the time they land on, in Mount Kilimanjaro, they are alone. And then they start being self-destructive. They want to do this, they want to do that. But if you keep your purpose It never changes. It's the same thing about making a difference. The byproduct will keep piling up, and you keep reinvesting it in making a difference in the lives of people. And it multiplies, and you are also well fulfilled.
Yeah.
I have to ask a secondary question. I know Terry's like easing in on my questions there. But to come to that exact point, when we asked those questions, the community was almost unsure why.
That's so true.
Some, and I don't want to say all, categorized it as intrusive.
Intrusive.
Which is interesting. So my question also...
Can you go through the questions to put context
yes,
to Dr.
absolutely.
Phil in
So
the
we
audience?
had a tremendous amount of questions. Obviously, a part of our intake process to the loan application, we also understood there's no race-based data collected in Canada.
Zero.
So this is our opportunity as a Black-focused initiative to ask the things that make you, not just your business.
Yes, sir.
Your business plan tells me about your plan for your business. Your numbers tell me how you perform in your business, but you're a person.
You're human.
That's living in a society where I know there are other risk factors that will affect how you perform. I'm not using those as evaluators of whether you should get the loan or not.
That's it.
But it's what else can I put around you as a support? Economics cannot just be about money, right? But our community, some, not all, some were, why are you asking me this? Why are you asking me my sexuality? Why are you asking me if I have kids? Why are you asking me if I sleep? Why do you ask me if I eat well?
Yeah.
The reason why is because I'm trying to figure out what kind of tide you are surfing trying to get to your dream of starting this business. If you have these other challenges, there are other resources that we at FACE can be the megaphone to say there needs to be more to support a Black entrepreneur because there are other challenges. That means that we're educating our community on the fullness of what entrepreneurship means. How important is education in what our strategy around economics is in terms, and I don't mean formal education. You're a PhD, I know, and I love you for it. But we've had conversation that it's bigger than that. This is about educating our understanding of who we are as people and as a community.
There's a reason why FACE turned around the criteria for getting a loan and placed 10% on what the world outside would give 90% to.
Correct.
Facts.
It's because we place our finger right on your character. Your character.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Doctor.
This is why
Yes.
we placed our mark on your character. Your character is who you are, and that is not determined. You don't give yourself that brand. We, your community, tell FACE
not
your
Equifax,
character.
not TransUnion.
Your character is reflected in how you treat your spouse, and particularly men, how you treat your wife, how you live as a father, as a husband.
How you keep your word.
How you
Yes.
keep your word.
Yes.
Your responsibility as a role model
Voila.
to our communities. We want to see you not simply as a millionaire, but as also a portrait of resilience. Because we know it's not easy.
Where were you when I was going to university, Dr. Phil?
We know that it's not going to be easy.
That's
We
right.
expect you to be resilient. Not only to overcome the difficulties, but also to thrive. We want to showcase you as a portrait of resilience. We don't want you to be those millionaires who are laughing away and whiling away their time on some yacht in some seas. We want you to be alive in our community, helping to raise the next generation.
Yes.
A lot of the generation before were absent.
Yes.
We are rebuilding our communities.
That's right.
We didn't start FACE so that we can have absentee fathers, absentee mothers. We don't want absentee elders. Whether you're religious, you're a pastor, you're an imam, you need to be actively involved. And that is why we place our finger on your character.
That's it.
If we didn't want to invade, intrude, then we would have given their criteria your credit, 90%. Then we wouldn't care
We
what
couldn't
you
care.
do.
That's
You can
right.
be a millionaire and marry 10 wives. That's your business. But here, we want builders.
That's right.
We want community builders. We want people who are resilient.
And
we want people who will thrive and people who will be role models to the younger generation.
That's it. And
that's what FACE is here to do.
She should have just wrote the mission statement.
Exactly.
I feel like
Where have you been all our lives? The real Dr. Phil laying it down. I hope you're absorbing everything. And I'd like to remind everybody that our today's sponsor is FACE, the Federation of African Canadian Economics. If you need a loan of $10,000, $250,000, go to www.facecoalition.com. Also, I would like to thank Africa Center. Because without Africa Center in Alberta, a big shout out to Sharif Haji, we would not be sitting next to
real Dr. Phil.
Not just the real Dr. Phil. Let's call it what it is: a monumental addition to the intellectual pool of real scholars that you would gain in knowing across this country. And we always say this: we are leaderful. We are not leaderless. The problem is we are invisibilized. So if you're listening from Halifax, Quebec, Ontario, and you wonder how come you've never heard about the real Dr. Phil, well, that's the problem. We have to start to get our griot, our minds, our intellectuals, and they exist. And you know what? They have a beautiful Nigerian accent. They have a beautiful Haitian accent.
That's right.
They have a beautiful accent that does not sound like what you hear on CNN, does not sound what you hear on CBC, but that does not negate the intellectual properties and value that they bring to our society. In that sense, I want you to touch and talk to all of the young people listening to us that might feel like, do I belong to McGill? Do I belong to U of T? Can I really get to that PhD level in Vancouver? You did it. What advice would you give to somebody that wants to pursue an intellectual path and that's listening to the podcast right now, that is BIPOC?
I want to say, first of all, that you did not show up here by accident. There's a purpose to your life as someone who society have pushed into the margins.
Yes.
You happen to be one of those, who will be speaking from the margins, who will lift us out. We are on our way out. We are handing over the baton to you. You have a role to play. You will go to university or Institute of Technology or any of those places. You may decide to go into business, whatever you do. We want you to go into higher education. But that is to be able to gain a voice.
That's it.
It happens that often you may have that voice and knowledge and wisdom already placed in you, but often you are not able to speak it because your voice is not held up. Why I tell you to go to university is also to influence the university. There's a reason why it's called the Ivory Tower. It's not the Ebony Tower. There's a reason why it's called the Ivory Tower and not the Ebony Tower. We need people like you to put some color into that university.
It's true.
To begin to put some knowledge, because these are knowledge bases that do not reflect you.
Thank you.
Anywhere from banking to food, we have an abundance of knowledge on them.
Period.
They are not reflected. We are waiting for you, the next generation, to reflect them as scholars, as artists, as technicians, as chefs,
scientists.
It depends. Whichever lane, I will always say to you, look for three things. One, what you're passionate about. Please don't be pushed into the Department of Geography because your teacher said so. Think of, what am I passionate about?
Yes, that's it.
That's one. Two, what do they look like I have the expertise? You can be passionate about so many things, but look for the ones you think that you can develop the expertise, because talent untrained is wasted.
Rewind.
I've never done so many rewinds.
It's going to be the most rewinded show
Talent untrained is wasted. So you need to be passionate.
It's a t-shirt.
Because you're passionate about it, you need to train that talent. I was not the smartest in my class. I just had the passion to be able to speak out because I like to talk. You wouldn't catch me to being a chef because I need to talk. So that's why I kept going and going. So you need the passion. Then the passion helps you to develop the expertise.
Right.
And then the expertise keeps you going.
Right.
And we don't want you to be a mediocre.
So what's number three?
So number three is work to excel. That's why it has to be your passion.
Yeah.
You excel in what is your passion. You don't excel. We don't want mediocre neurosurgeons.
Period.
We want passionate and excellent chefs.
Yeah.
So whatever you want to do, strive to excel in it.
I love this.
Fantastic.
Did you guys hear
Strive
this?
to excel
in
in
it.
it.
So number one, be passionate. Number two, develop a concrete micro expertise that you know you will be passionate about. Number three, strive
at excelling.
excellence.
So let's talk about our Black students who are in these universities, who they're doing their master's or doing their PhD. You've got a community-based initiative like FACE, and you've got these minds who are now doing those three things. How do we connect the two? How does
Great
research,
Belle question.
because we're the actual, let's say, the raw material, right? FACE is these businesses who are starting, the different sectors they're beginning in the different regions across the country where conditions are different. That has to be captured to bring back to those ivory towers to give them color, and that's what will influence the knowledge that's there. How do we connect our brilliant Black minds who are in these universities with the talent that's happening in the community so that the research and the story of this journey can be done? What do we do?
I want to say that what I say we should do does not remove the responsibility of the universities. They get billions of funding to create structures, to create support systems to help our students. And many of them fail at that. For instance, we do go to our students, our Black students end up with health workers, therapists in universities where they are not well served. How can you serve them well when you don't know them? They are not well informed about us, and yet they are supposed to tell us about our mental health. These are people who ask you questions about, oh, you're from South Africa. Which country from South Africa are you from? And then you have to explain that South Africa is a country.
It's a country, yes.
And then you have to tell the whole story about Nelson Mandela.
Right?
We need people who understand us. We need people who can, talk to us, have the language.
Right.
So first of all is that the universities have, and other institutions have the responsibility to set up support systems to serve us well.
Right.
Because they are serving other people well. And the beginning of that is to bring in our own people who know, which is where we talk about representation, and also to find ways to also bring in the language and every one of them. I say the same thing. So that's one. The second thing is that beyond the university, we can't wait for them forever. We need to do things. And this is where I call on Black scholars across Canada. At the University of Alberta, we have what we call the Black Faculty Collective. They are now propping up across Canada. Some are older than others. Ours are fairly new. I am one of the spokesperson. We have a job to train the coming generations. We need to mentor them. We really need to figure out, we are few and often overworked, but we have to start making this part of our work, part of our research. The best way for me to put it is the way I do my research. I know that I don't consider the university a place where there is knowledge. The university is a factory where you process knowledge. The sites of knowledge are... The university is not a place where you have knowledge. It is a knowledge processing factory.
Wow.
The sites of knowledge are outside the university.
That is so true.
So for you to bring that knowledge in, you need to engage the communities. So I tell our Black faculties, much of the knowledge that you're studying are produced by the mainstream. Over 85% of what is known about Black people were produced by non-Black people. And we have continued to circulate it and recycle it and recycle it. It is time now for us to begin to generate our own knowledge. Our knowledge bases do not have boundaries. And so the way I look at it in my research, I go to communities, I go to Africa Center, I go to FACE. I want to find out how I can be part of their work. I want to know how I can generate knowledge that is useful, because a lot of academic knowledge end up in the libraries. There are jargons that most people don't read. We circulate it among ourselves as academics. as a black faculty, you should be thinking about local demand for knowledge. What do our people need?
True.
You also have to think about global demand for knowledge, because we have to be at the forefront of knowledge, directing the path of knowledge.
I agree.
We are tired of people telling us what to study. So local demand for knowledge is to produce what FACE needs, what Africa Center needs. I talk to them and they say, oh, we need to know about entrepreneurs. But there is no data on entrepreneurs.
Black entrepreneurs, that's
Black entrepreneurs. So we begin from ground zero. You interview the black entrepreneurs. You generate knowledge from them. You run nationwide surveys.
Absolutely.
And you establish those surveys, and you start running them every 5 years. You figure out as a scholar where you get the funding to do all of that, and then channel that knowledge to FACE. Every 5 years or 3 years, FACE will come up with new challenges that need to be tested through that survey.
That's right.
You add them to the survey, or you rework that survey. That's how they have Statistics Canada.
That's right.
We should have our own Statistics Black Canada.
I agree.
Black stats.
Indigenous
That's
does.
right.
Black stats, and give it, and if Statistics Canada want to do that work, it should do it with FACE. Because we know our problems. And you know why? It's not just that we know, but Statistics Canada cannot reach our people.
That's what
FACE.
it is. That's what it is.
So a lot of the knowledge, you put it in the internet, or somebody comes to my house and say they want to collect data on census, and I close the door and I say, I don't know who you are. But FACE,
And they just spent your tax-paying dollars.
Africa Center can go to my pastor. Africa Center can go to community and religious leaders and collect that information.
Because we knock on the door with
We
a
knock
common
on the door.
understanding, shared lived
And
experience,
I
and
can
trust.
tell you, if you want to
immediately.
collect knowledge, for instance, on intimate partner violence in black communities, much of what is
Sorry,
Say
what's
that
that
again?
term?
intimate partner violence, just call it family violence in black communities. You're going to get, you will never see any data that connects it to racism.
Never.
Because they collect data from the mainstream. They can't go to my,
notes, stats.
they won't be able to get to my pastor.
Yes.
They don't have access to my church
Correct.
to be able to ask these questions. But the thing also is
They
that
can't
my
reach us where we are, so then
my
they can't
pastor
do the
would be
research
able
for
to
us.
tell them, please don't ask my congregation about intimate partner violence. Ask them about gender relations.
Right. So even the labels, or even the
The
way
labels.
they frame their studies, their thesis, doesn't respond. It won't resonate with us.
The same message, but different language and different mediums.
Gotcha.
To answer, and you will get to them, and they will answer. They might be hesitant if they see someone who do not reflect them, comes with IPV, because you're already labeling them as barbaric people, as violent people,
That's
when we
right.
know that intimate partner violence goes across history and stripes and classes and gender, etc.
IPV, intimate
IPV,
partner violence.
violence.
I've never heard that term.
Which is, of course,
Of course.
too, you wouldn't know.
You
So
wouldn't.
if you walk into a church with that and it's explained to them,
Gotcha.
they will go like, so you think we are here murdering our wives?
That's right.
But
It's insulting in its nature.
It's
right?
insulting in
Exactly.
its nature. But
Yeah.
if you come in with, we want to talk about gender relations,
Gotcha.
they look at themselves and the pastor says, answer the questions.
That's right. That's right.
You don't begin with, how do you treat your wife? You begin with gender relations.
Correct.
How do men and women relate in your culture? What are the values that guide your relationship? How are those values challenging here for you to maintain? Tell me some of the ways. When things go bad, what do they look like? You are now talking to them as human beings
That's right.
who have values. There are reasons why sometimes those values go bizarre. One of them is racism.
Yes.
When you have people who are living in a different culture, who are living in the margins, they bring in pressures and racism from the schools, from the workplace, from the supermarket, everywhere they go. All of that, they keep going, and then the family has to stay together. Family is their value. They have this value that the family must stay together at every cost. So all of these pressures are coming to them, particularly racism. And they are still told that you need to stay together. What happens?
Yeah. And that's the part I call it the pressure cooker of Canada
pressure
and
cooker.
society. Because there's no way that families, the uphill battle that black families are in to stay together and raise children and to maintain our values is constantly disrupted by the racism and the exclusion that we suffer.
Yeah.
It's very, in our program at Côte-de-Neige BCA, the Strengthening Black Families program, when I train trainers, because I'm certified to train trainers across North America, I'm the only French-speaking trainer. And I always say, listen, the husband goes out into the world, particularly the black man goes out into the world, his boss doesn't want him to work there, doesn't think he has the credentials, there's a glass ceiling. It's not even glass, it's really like cement, right? It's concrete over his head. Constantly microaggressed, told that he's not worthy, told that he's things that he's not. This is what he deals with every day. He comes home. Who's he talking to? How does he let that go? Because he's got to be the strong one. So then when it breaks down to a point where he's being aggressive, and aggressive is not necessarily physical, it can be emotional, or it can be complete retreat with his wife. And then the wife then takes that stress and now it translates how she deals with the kids. And then, I always had a joke saying that's why they treat the hamster mean. That's the point. It's that this pressure from the outside has created conditions that the values and the reason why those two people came together to make children and make a home looking at their legacy is constantly interrupted.
And that is the reason why I said, face knows that you can't treat any black challenge in isolation.
You cannot.
Yeah.
And that is not our way. That's
including entrepreneurship. You have to treat it in the context of the broader circumstances of their lives.
Absolutely.
You can't be dealing with family violence when money is part of the problem. We got to know what to do with the problem. Two of them are unemployed.
Yeah.
It tells you that you can't bring peace into the family until you settle the economic problem.
Correct.
You can't deal with that when the children are not doing well in school.
That's right.
It will continue to create tension in the family because they will blame each other.
Right.
Remember that these are families who expect their children to do the best.
Yeah.
Their way out of poverty, their way to having a voice in society is education.
Correct. Because education can be the stepping stone
Education
to
can be the stepping stone to resolving the
problem.
economic problem. So they are all linked together.
Yeah.
But what we do, especially in the Ivory
Eurocentric,
Tower,
which
is why it's Eurocentric,
Yeah.
is that because of the individualism that permeates, by the way, that we call our societies, our kind of society, they call them collectivist cultures.
Collectivist cultures.
We are collectivists. We look at the collective. We don't look at just myself.
Yeah.
So you need to deal with, that is why the community also have to give support. But what we find is that a lot of the support system are in the mainstream.
That's right.
But the community, the mainstream takes everything.
That's right.
They want to solve all our problems.
Yeah.
But we say, you don't know us well, so you can't serve us well. At least let us work together with you. You need to strengthen those support systems in the community because that's their first port of call.
Yeah.
Black people, typical black woman who has a problem with the husband goes to the religious leader or to an elder. Their first port of call wouldn't be a stranger who happens to be a therapist.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
They will go first to talk about it, and the spiritual leader might be the conduit through which they reach the therapist.
Right.
But the spiritual leader will vet to make sure that the therapist is a Muslim.
See, these are in those nuances, and that's a part of that cultural basket that you're talking about, because therapy and mental health and all those things are not necessarily the way in which we frame those challenges. But I think what we're learning in that cultural grocery store is that therapy can be, but I think it's also the medium. A black therapist who has a lens of who I am and what I deal with is very different from me going to the mainstream and getting somebody to help me about me, but you don't know anything about me. So I think you're so right, and we don't understand, but Face is betting that we will, because if we put education, and we're not talking about, again, not formal, it's having this understanding of the interconnected elements that will strengthen us and insulate us as a community. If your economics are not right, you're probably living in a neighborhood that isn't safe, in an apartment that gives you stress and strain and might make your health impact. Your kids go to a school that is not well served by the government, right? And you have probably a far distance, if you can get a job, to get to it. All of those things make high risk factors. And those words, we need to break them down so our community understands and resonates with them. And that's what I love about the way, I've known you for about 24 hours now. I love the way you break down these things. It's the packaging of the things that are obvious to us, though. And that's the problem. Main Street does not take the time, and they don't have an interest, in my opinion,
Zero interest.
to make sure that we we can craft the language around what we need to address. That's why it has to be done by us.
But and also to rebound on what you're saying, I don't even know that mainstream doesn't have an interest as much as
They might have an interest, but what's the intent?
No, but some might argue that the system was not just built like this, it was engineered and architected that way. So when you think about the indigenous residential school system, they're trying to break up the family. Because when you take the kids away, you break the mother, you break the father, so there's so many things. And some might say that we still live in this kind of system where black communities, black folks and indigenous folks are systematically ostracized. Our kids do go to underserved schools. When we do leave this and try to run away from our think about this.
Yes.
We say, I was in real estate for a while, Dr. Phil, the real Dr. Phil. And I used to have black clients that would say, I want all the neighborhoods except this one. There was 4 main neighborhoods they didn't want. They were all black.
Yeah, but there was high density value.
All black. And they would proudly say at the housewarming that they're the only black people on their street. And then I would say, but do you understand what you're doing to your kids? And I think that could resonate to Asian family, indigenous families. When you leave your village and you go out in this world and you go in these suburbs, chances are you can't vote locally for somebody that looks like you.
Nope.
Your kids are probably going to be the only flavor in that school. That means bullying.
That's right.
That means mental health,
Microaggressions.
potential mental health situation down the road. And then we wonder why eventually the families break up. So in Quebec, I don't know about here, but over 1 in 2 marriages finishes in divorces, ends up in divorce. And I would love to know the data on our community, which we don't have, right? But I think that, like you've said, there is this intentional refusal to contextualize racism and systemic racism and what impacts it has on our family. Because I've been to a lot of families that are still together, but she sleeps upstairs and he sleeps downstairs. He comes in at 12, 1 in the morning. She doesn't even care anymore because you said something so magic about who are you married to? And I don't want to say it because I think it is so golden that I'm telling you now, you're going to get a rewind on that. But could you touch on that aspect of us moving out of our villages in North America, in Canada, and going into these places that are maybe not designed for us and that don't welcome us? There's a great series called Them on Amazon Prime if anybody wants to see like historically what this does to us going in the suburbs. But I would love for you to touch on this aspect of the divorce rate. Do we have data on this? Is there any divorce data? And if we're not divorced, you use the term about being married. I think you said badly married, or and then you said
perfect,
you said black women should be married too. And then I'll let you continue because I think it's brilliant how you framed it.
You know, there's a fruit in much of Nigeria, but mostly in my ethnic group. It's called ube, which is a kind of pear. I came here, I heard about the avocado, but the avocado is actually a different kind of avocado because there is the native pear. And that pear is my favorite. It just happens that you can't transport it anywhere. It can't leave Nigeria for some reason. Once it goes, heat melts it. Okay. So if you take it from Nigeria, by the time you get here, it has mold. I've done it several times. And I think that's what our elites are doing when they want to move away from black neighborhoods and move to.
That's a great analogy.
You know, trees have places where they thrive.
They have roots.
They have roots. If you uproot them and you place them where? Most trees in Africa will not grow up in Canada because it's too cold.
The conditions don't permit.
The conditions don't permit.
That's right.
A lot of people, I think the whole world, the whole Western world, have somehow... The last time I saw the phrase, it takes a whole village to raise a child, I was expecting people to say African proverb. It was actually applied to, I think it was... Bill Clinton's wife, what is her name?
Hillary?
Hillary Clinton. He said it was an African proverb that was that she uses. It wasn't by by Hillary Clinton. It's an African proverb. And it's a very, very important proverb. It takes a whole village to raise a child. When you take your child away from the village and you move to some place, you've left the village.
Hey.
Who is going to raise that child? Because you've left the village behind.
That's it.
We need to keep our children in a place where they can properly situate themselves.
Voila.
One, they need to know you are in a marginalized community by intention.
Correct.
You are intentionally marginalized. We didn't do anything wrong to be placed.
Correct.
Class
Yes.
is intentionally machined.
Voila.
As much as people tell you it's not an accident of birth.
Thank you.
So those intersectionalities affect us in various ways. Our children need to know that.
That
The
part.
fact that we are
Yeah.
marginalized.
Yeah.
Situate yourself.
That's it.
You are from the margins.
Yeah.
And you need to find your way to kind of bring yourself, you're in the margin, to talk to the mainstream.
That's right.
You can't just stay in the margin.
Yeah.
But you don't need to live in the mainstream.
Either. That's right.
So ground yourself in the margin, but have a voice in the mainstream.
Project in the mainstream.
Project in
That's
the
right.
mainstream.
Yeah.
But also, they will ask the question, how come we're marginalized and everything? That's where I feel that we never talk to our children about who we are as a people.
That's right.
As someone who grew up in the middle of an African village, I began to understand why we do have cultures. It's not like school taught us how to live life.
Yeah.
When you come here as an immigrant and they want to teach you about parenting, that's an insult.
It is.
You want to help me
It
to
is.
you want me to transit, or kind of translate what I know about parenting
Yes.
into here,
Yeah.
and also restructure my cultural basket to be a transformed parent here. You're not teaching me about parenting. I
No.
already know.
That's
my
why we call it
culture-
Strengthening Families
my
Program.
culture-
You have stuff. Now we're going
Yeah.
to strengthen it.
My
amplify
culture
it.
has, and you need to strengthen it because this is the new homeland.
Correct.
There's some
New
things,
environment.
education you need to get
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
And so we need to tell them that we do have ways of doing things in Africa. We do have. Our civilization was cut short by colonization. Well, we didn't grow. But the little bits of it as a kid, growing up in an African village, I saw, told me that every culture has ways of doing things. And cultures are not, they don't stand still. They evolve.
Yeah.
They keep changing. Which means even the cultures restructure their basket.
Yeah.
Things come in and things change. So when you say African culture, is it before or after colonization, or in this age, which we call
That's
the
it.
age of transnationalism? Things are changing. We who are living in diaspora are impacting on those who live in Africa.
Correct.
And those who live in Africa are impacting because it's now a virtual world.
That's right.
A lot of fashion is coming from Africa.
100%.
And we need our children to understand that we had a system of education. The Western education is not education. It's Western schooling. And just like the so-called women's movement,
Yeah.
it's not the women's movement, it's the Western middle-class white women's movement.
That's it.
Women had ways of protesting in Africa.
That's right.
For example, in the olden days, which they actually still do in some African villages, if they don't like what is happening in society, particularly by men, in the midnight, they strip naked. From the 5-year-old girl to the grandmother who is in her 80s. Now, men will not stay. You want to stay at your grandmother's vagina? I don't think so.
That's awesome. I
They
never
stay
heard
and the
this.
men cower. The
And they
men
understand.
recall and they send emissaries to say, tell the women we have heard. Whatever it is, we can negotiate.
We can fix
And the
it.
women would say, before we begin the negotiation, these 3 things must stop
Oh,
before we begin. Because they don't want to put on their clothes again and it starts all over.
Right.
And usually women point at what is important. Values in society, bad habits, drinking, stuff like that. People might say, oh, they are so, but that is what destroys society. Those are the things that destroy the fabric of society.
correct.
Wealth is not going to build society. It needs to stand by the fabric of society. We don't teach children about marriage. Why is it that when you want to marry, you don't meet someone in Switzerland and call your parents back home and say, I've met my fiancé. Who is your fiancé? No. If If you meet somebody, we want to know who she is, who her parents are. We need to investigate and see if they meet up. It's not money. Their values. And then the elders speak to themselves. You don't marry your wife. The elders from her family give your wife to the elders in your family. So they hold the elders responsible. You're a little boy. They hold them. So if anything, that's why it's done in the middle of the village. So they take the elders talk. And they say, we hand our daughter over to your extended family. If anything happens to her, we hold you guys responsible. You are responsible. This is a little boy. And that's why you cannot walk into my father's compound and say, you want to marry me. I don't know who you are. You go and bring your elders. That's the people we talk to. We've dealt without all this. We say we are in love. What is love? It vanishes after a few years. The elders want to know that you're resilient enough to handle family, because family is hard. They want to know that there is joy and everything, but they know that you will soon get out of that joy. They want to know that when we have a kid convulsing, you know what to do.
That's right.
You know to run to, whether you were quarreling, you take the child straight to the medicine woman.
That's right.
Whether you were fighting or whatever doesn't matter.
That's right.
You can continue your fight after the medicine woman has finished dealing with the kid.
Yes.
We don't tell them about values.
Responsibility.
Community is more
right.
important. Your achievement is branded by your community. So you can go to wherever is the best part of town and build your big house and have your parties with the mainstream. We don't recognize you because you have no value to our community. Your grade, your value, your achievements are tied to what you give to your community. So as a scholar, I am nothing to my community if I don't do research that improves their lives.
Pushes the needle forward.
And that is why it's easy to tell me to be careful about my conduct. If you say, Dr. Phil, you need to be careful how you live because, as a feminist, blah, 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 I don't hear that. But if you say that the young men are watching you, you are their role model, that will keep me on my butt.
Right.
Because everybody has had the Denzel Washington talk. He says much of what keeps him on his butt is the young men who are watching him.
Absolutely.
Right.
People say, how have you stayed with your wife? I think she was formerly a teacher. He said, I have people watching me from below. I need to stay on track. Because we recognize that as a professor in a Western university, I didn't get there by accident. I don't have the luxury of publishing papers that nobody reads. It definitely doesn't get to my community. That is a waste. If you think of what has been invested in me, I tell my colleagues, if you start a business with what has been invested in me, if you give it to 1 million African women, they will outdo me.
That's right.
That is why with all of those millions invested in, or billions, I need to do something with it. I don't have the privilege of sitting in the ivory tower and churning out papers that nobody reads. No, people in the mainstream have that privilege. Being middle class in the mainstream is having the privilege of going on vacations and publishing and studying, drinking tea in 18th century England. That's what they do. But I don't have the privilege. I need to go to FACE to know what is needed by my community to study that, to be able to develop proposals for them. I need to be a role model to the young people coming up. If I'm a Sunday school teacher. I'm a Sunday school teacher not to simply reproduce everything, but to bring the word of Christ from the viewpoint of an African woman. Because there are parts of it that would not make sense to young people.
Correct.
I want to take that message and break it down to what it means to you as an African person. When I say that, it probably is not in your interest to be, sleeping around. That's not a message, but I need to talk to you why it's important for you to have discipline over your sexual life, because it can lead to other things. And if you're going to handle the responsibility of having just one wife, this is not a polygamous society.
Right.
You can't do that. You need to be, in our culture, we have, where we are now, it's not, there's a reason why our foremothers and forefathers did it. Children died young. Lifespan was short. You need to work in the farm. The more children you have, the more barns of yams and stuff you have. And that keeps people, because sometimes there are famines. So they were not stupid to have polygamous families. The Jews had it. You don't have any reason to have 2 wives today. You don't have a farm, for goodness sake.
You don't have a farm.
You don't run a farm. You get your salary every month, or maybe you run a business. You need, as a monogamous family, to give to society. But you're not a mainstream monogamous family. You're the tentacle of extended families. So don't, with your wife, get that money, or your husband, and move to another part of town. Figure out how you can keep your children in the village, for the village to raise your child. 2 of you cannot raise that kid. Because they will go to school, they will tell them about black people and all of that. You need the village to keep reminding them who they are. The village, you're just 2 voices against millions of voices. You need the village to keep counteracting that message of who you are. You know, when I was a kid in the village, I began to understand why a kid does not have only one name. When a kid is born, they look at the circumstances of your life, of the whole family. You don't name your kid, by the way. You can name your kid Wellesley or whatever you like, but the elders will look and say, he married into a good family. We seem to be having good things with this family. There could be, even, we can build on that relationship. We're having business connections and all of that. They can name you Uzamaka, which means the road is wonderful. You're basically telling your kid, we have invested in this family. So we want you guys to continue the collaboration. We don't want anything to happen with this, your mother's family. Whatever you need to invest, whatever you need to sacrifice to keep that relationship from generation to generation, maintain the relationship we've maintained with your mother's family, because they are important to us. What it means also is that when Uzamaka grows up, might actually want to marry from that part of town. I was named Ezelabo. If you go to my village, if you say Dr. Fee, they don't know who I am. But that is because my mother is from a royal family. My grandmother is from a royal family. They don't have royal families in my father's place. They have aristocratic families. So 2 royal families and 1 aristocratic family. What they're saying is, let us put our pedigrees together so that we can have the best of breed. Not in terms of blood or anything. Not in that racist way. But we are expecting you, Phil, to be the best of these 3 families. So everywhere you go, they call you that name. People call me Phil, but when I step into my grandmother's place, they call me Ezelabo. When I came in, they keep telling you, that breed, we hope. And sometimes I walk in, an elder says Ezelabo, and the other person says, where is she now? Oh, she's actually not in Nigeria. They don't know outside Nigeria what it means. She's in the land of the white people. Okay. So she's there and she's doing good things. Oh, the leopard never loses its spot. Many times they talk in parables. They're basically praising you.
Of course.
Imagine how you feel when you walk out. And then remember that you get that name. That's the name that your grandparents gave. My parents gave my own name. I have names all over. Even my village gave me a name, which is Wamau, the daughter of a masquerade. So when I walk into the village now, you will see people dancing because they can't contain their joy that I came. So in order not to push me to the ground, they want to dissipate the energy. So they dance over there. And then they walk up to come and greet me. And you know, the greeting, it takes me about 2 hours to get from my house to my auntie's house, because you have to keep greeting and keep greeting and keep greeting. Imagine the energy you absorb when you get onto the plane and you're coming back to Canada. You get full now. You get to the department and you realize you have to write your annual report. You have to publish 2 papers. There are publishers on your back. And you see your shoulders. I'm Ezelabo one mouth. And do it.
That's right.
I'm a conqueror.
I know who I am.
That's it.
And then you hear people say, oh, that black woman, that person, you tell yourself, I know who I am.
So you know what I'm hearing, Dr. Phil? The real Dr. Phil. We're going to say it like as much as we can, is that, one, this is the best conversation I've had in a very long time. Two, this can't be the last conversation.
No.
And I think that there is obviously a project that has to happen, because being the victim, I use victim, it's the only time I use that word, of colonialism, so I've been pulled away from my original understanding of how I'm supposed to unpack these things or my position. There has to be a way that we bring that item to the cultural grocery store here. There has to be a baseline between us as Black people in Canada to kind of share those values. I think there's a way to do it. I swear you're the person to show us how to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Or be the voice of how we can build it together.
We can all work together, because we keep hearing about these stories about, back in in Africa, everything is wonderful and everything. I keep telling people, remember the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's right. We can't
Another
romanticize
thing, we
what
need
we
to
don't know
work
as well. Yeah.
together. And a lot of newcomers from Africa don't know slavery.
Yeah.
That's
They
right.
don't know racism.
Yes.
They don't understand.
Yeah.
We haven't taken time to learn from the Caribbeans,
From our eyes.
from
and how
the
we
eyes who
experience
have
it.
undergone 400 years of resilience.
Yeah.
That's right.
We let people in the mainstream teach us resilience. We don't go to them, because people would say we are different. We don't focus on our differences.
We should never.
Look at it. We can draw from our diversity,
Yeah.
but we keep our eyes on those commonalities, what we share in common. I said, we have differences. There are many ways in which we piece each other off, but let's just focus on the common things that Black people share that we can pass on to our children,
Yeah.
because my children will not know Igbo land the way I know it. They will not remember Nigeria as I know it. In fact, Nigeria has even changed. What is Nigeria anyway? It is people who live by the Niger area.
Yeah.
What is Niger? River Niger. Who called it River Niger? Some guy called, I can't remember his name, some white guy who was swimming and whatever and found himself around that place and found a river that my people call Oshimiri. And called it Niger.
And renamed it.
And renamed it. So that's what Nigeria is. We haven't taken time to learn about our commonalities. This person is Caribbean. Oh, this person is from Africa. Oh, this person is this. The same thing that mainstream is doing to us.
Yep.
I don't understand Black people. We're still doing the same thing. I don't understand Caribbeans. You don't have to understand everything. Just lean on what makes you people the same. What are the commonalities? And lean on their strength.
Yeah.
Because they have a lot to teach you about Canada. A lot of our entrepreneurs, by the way, really top-notch entrepreneurs are Caribbeans, because they've been here longer.
Exactly.
But where do new African comers go to do apprenticeship?
Very true.
That's correct.
Very true.
Very true.
Very true.
Go to those who know you better.
Yeah.
Make the bridge. We have to
Make
build
the bridge.
Yeah.
Build
Yeah.
the bridge.
And I'm saddened to say, but that is pretty much that's today's episode, beautiful people. I'd like to thank all our listeners for your time. My co-host Tiffany Callender, the real Dr. Phil,
Yes.
for sharing all the wisdom. This is only the first part. We're gonna come back. We're gonna come back to Alberta. We got to do a second show, second part.
Because we're live from Calgary.
Absolutely.
Did we say that? Did
We
say that
are
again?
live from
We're
Calgary, beautiful Calgary. We
At the
shot
riverfront.
Yeah,
right at the
riverfront.
riverfront. But before we let our audience go, I think you said one of the best story I've ever heard. You said tons of great stories yesterday while we're eating at this amazing restaurant. What's the name of the restaurant again? Let's give them a shout out. Luban.
Luban, that's right. Luban.
Somalian restaurant.
Yes.
Shout out to Luban.
Eastern Horn.
Amazing food.
Fantastic.
I hope I get to go grab some before I jump on the airplane. But you said something amazing yesterday. Can you give it was a great story that you lived where you were saying that your colleagues, white colleagues at the university, were telling you once in a while that they didn't understand. They would remind you, "Hey, Dr. Phil, you're a bit late today. What's going on?" And then you gave an amazing analogy
Answer.
What's the answer? Do you remember? You gave us
I remember the answer, and
Could you give that?
and time.
On this
Time is also something I struggle with as somebody who lives in some way outside the West, because they calibrate their time by 24 hours.
Yeah.
Growing up in the village, we didn't calibrate by 24 hours. We went by sun up, sun down. Sun is at its head, which is about 12 noon.
Yeah.
So this thing about you have to be here at a particular time is really hard, because if you think of the lives of Black people, we don't have that seamless the seamless way that time runs for people in the mainstream, because they have a lot of support system that keeps them going. But for me, I have to attend to my extended family. I need to attend to my community. I do all of that before I get my children, before I get to school. So as an assistant professor, I was always apologizing for being late. But after a while, as I became an associate professor, I began to ask, why do I have to apologize for having kids, for taking care of my kids? It's not like I stopped somewhere and did a joint or something. And I was just coming. I'm hurrying up to get to school. So one of those I had to face up to, when the people don't say, why did you come late? That's people give you, like people who are she's sloppy again, and they don't say it, but it's that thing of what is happening. And when people started looking at their church, I had to face up and say, you know what? People like me, keep your jobs. I have 3 kids, and I'm donating them to the university system. 2 are already in the university. We want 2 down, 1 to go. A good number of you here do not have kids. Without people like me who donate these kids, you don't have a job.
That's how you quiet down the system.
And now we can start the meeting.
That is Dr. Phil. For those of you who did not know, now you know. Dr. Phil, tell the audience listening to you, you shared so much wisdom, and we're blessed, Black and highly favored to have been able to listen to you. How can they follow you? Where are you on social media? Are you on social media? Is it LinkedIn? Is there a website? Where can they find the audience in 30 seconds?
I would like to say that I am, first of all, on Twitter. I'm fairly new, so I'm working my way through that. I do have a website where you will find a lot of my stuff, including Black History Month. It's called PACE. PACE.ualberta.ca.
Okay.
PACE at ualberta.ca. PACE.ualberta.ca.
And what about your
PACE
Twitter?
stands for the Pan-African Collaboration, Pan-African Collaboration for Excellence. That is PACE.
Amazing.
Still being new, I'm kind of still studying Twitter and also wanting to see how much of our people are there, and also
Black
trying to
Twitter
figure out. And I found
Black
that
Twitter will love
there's
you.
a lot going on. So I am still restructuring my account, also to figure out the name. And now that I've talked, to Face, I think we need to figure out also what to call myself.
The real Dr.
Yeah.
Phil.
The real Dr. Phil.
I think that's the name.
What to start really working on it, because
our Dr. Phil.
because I have found that we all have to do things for a purpose. We don't just do things for people to follow us. We need to begin to, learn from other people, pass on everything. They say Black people do things with attitude. They don't really mean attitude.
You mean swag?
We do things with swag, which means we do things with purpose.
That's it. Well said.
The thing they call attitude makes it like, when we dance, we shout and everything. No, we do things
with purpose. I like that.
with purpose.
I like that. Thank you, Dr. Phil. Tiffany, where can the audience find you?
I am on Instagram at I am Tiffany Calendar. I am on Twitter at Tiff Calendar, Facebook Tiffany Calendar, LinkedIn Tiffany Calendar. But more important, facecoalition.com.
That's
it. find the work that we're all contributing to.
That's it.
I'm periodically sprinkled here and there on my platforms.
Look out to our next episode. This is our 2nd season. It will be Dr. Jafrali. And follow, subscribe to our TOC podcast on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Yes, because this episode on YouTube is actually going to be subtitled in French. We believe that diversity is a reality, but inclusion is a choice, and we make the choice to be inclusive because a lot of BIPOC communities do speak French. So check out our YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Last but not least, if you're an entrepreneur looking for a loan of $10,000 to $250,000, a Black entrepreneur, www.facecoalition.com is the place where you want to register your business, get mapped out. And by the time you listen to this episode, chances are you won't necessarily need google.com anymore if you want to invest and buy black. Closing word, I'm your host, Thierry Lindor. It was my honor to be with you today. Make sure to join the movement on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next time, stay blessed, black, and highly favored. And if you're not black, stay on the right side of history, but more importantly, on the right side of humanity. Thank you. Hey-oh.